they know what the wording of the elements of the laws are, so they just kind of like craft whatever you did and whatever you said to meet the criteria of the elements of that law, and you are in a jam. So the question is, should Sergeant Crowley have arrested Dr. Gates? And the unequivocal answer is no. No, 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 no. No. The Supreme Court has even taken a position on disorderly conduct that these laws in so many different cities flimsy and so vague until one can almost read into an action or the elements whatever one wants to. So the Supreme Court has taken a position in the past, and we had a mandate in Dayton Police Department, where I was for 13 years, that a citizen could not be disorderly to a police officer. Now, that does not mean that a citizen can just stand up and face off with a police officer and threaten him or her. But you see, that's a different law. Doing something to an officer is something different than disorderly conduct. Disorderly conduct is usually creating a condition that is threatening to someone, that is disturbing someone, and that is contributing to the potential for a worse problem to develop if something is not done to control that behavior, protest, or activity. And that has nothing to do with somebody standing up talking about some police officer's mama, or telling some police officer, I'm going to have your job, or telling a police officer, I don't like you no how because all of you are a bunch of racists. That's not disorderly conduct, people. Why isn't it disorderly conduct? Because the court has said so. That is not. Give me another reason then, Mr. Host, all right? Because the officers are trained to rise above what a person has to say. If an officer went around and arrested everybody who called him or her a name, and everybody who didn't like them and called them a pig or racist or whatever, well then they would never get anything else done because they would just be dragging people into jail all the time for disorderly conduct. People, what happened in Dr. Gates' home was not an arrestable offense. So, did the police officer act stupidly as the president first said that he did? Yes, he not only acted stupidly, but he acted illegally. Sergeant Crowley falsely arrested Dr. Gates. And that is why there are no charges pending today on Dr. Gates. So what do we say here? How do we resolve this and not just be saying everything that is? Let's give some grades here. Let's give some grades here. All right. The neighbor who called the police, to me, gets an A, because that person was doing what more citizens ought to do. The first police response by Sergeant Crowley gets a C+. C+ because he should have staged a better approach and response to a call that said a burglary is in process. and then he wouldn't have had to be on edge because he would have had a more balanced approach with other police officers and would have been less fearful or threatened or whatever by whatever he found. In other words, he would have had backup. Gates produced his ID as a police officer asked. Dr. Gates gets an A for doing that. I don't care what he said. I don't care whether you call him racist 25,000 times. If he gave up his ID, he gets an A. Then Dr. Gates get upset. And then he started agitating the situation apparently. Well, Dr. Gates gets a C. Because I can understand him being upset. I can understand him having the officer further question him after he identified himself. I can understand his interpretation and his perception about what police profiling has meant in this nation, especially to black men. So he gets graded down considerably to C. Okay, the sergeant does his job well by pursuing the identification of the person he had there to determine whether that person was a resident or whether that person was a burglar. Now, even though we got attitude involved up in this, I'm going to give the officer a B- for getting that done.